everyone, I'm Fernanda, or you can just call me Chimmy. I love my OCs. Shocker, I know. But in all seriousness, ever since creating my out-of-the-norm characters, I don't think I've ever been this fixated on anything before. Well, at least not at this level of fixation. Which is funny, because I've had OCs before them, it's not like they're my first ones. But for some reason, these guys just stuck with me. And it feels like the more time goes by, the more I love them. And so that got me thinking, why am I more attached to them? Like I said, I've had OCs before, but they would only last about a week or so before I eventually forgot about them. And so while I was thinking, it came to me. The biggest difference between my out-of-the-norm characters and all the other OCs I've made is that these guys are more fleshed out. They just feel more real to me, if that makes sense. Like, it's gotten to a point where I'm literally giggling and kicking my feet thinking about them. I just love them so much. And so I thought, why not give you guys some tips on how to make your OCs feel more real? I'm no professional by any means, but these are just some tips that have helped me become more attached to my characters, which I hope can help some of you guys too. And so without further ado, let's get into it. Number 1, think of their personalities. This may seem like a pretty obvious one, but just hear me out. When I say think of their personality, I don't mean going, alright, you're gonna be lazy and carefree. Boom, that's it. No, by thinking of their personality, I mean to not be afraid to give them more traits. A character's main trait could be that they're lazy, but maybe they're also extremely smart despite what many people think of them. It's not a bad thing to give your characters more than one personality trait, even if it seems like the opposite of their main one. People have more to them than just one trait. For example, when I first created my OC Melanie, she was just the nice one of the group who was extroverted and got along with everyone. There's nothing wrong with that, of course, but it just sort of left me stuck. I didn't really have much else going for her, and so I wasn't having as much fun thinking about her since she was just always nice. And so one day I started thinking to myself, what are some traits I have? And one of the first ones that came to me is my short temper. I get irritated pretty easily, which is something I'm not proud of, but it's true. And so I thought, why not give Melanie this trait? That although she does her best to be nice and friendly towards everyone, maybe it doesn't always work for her because of her short temper. This made her way more interesting to me and added more to her character, especially since now it made her feel like an actual person who has flaws just like everyone else. Which actually leads me to the next tip, which is pretty much on the same boat as this one. Number 2, giving your characters flaws. This may be a bit of a scary one, or at least it was to me, since I used to think that all of my OCs had to be perfect and could do no wrong. But I learned actually that that's not the case. Your characters don't have to be the perfect person. They can have flaws and make mistakes, that's totally fine. And in fact, that could make them even more interesting since now you or other people could relate to them. Adding flaws to a character can add so much to them, not only personality-wise, but also to their growth as a character. Maybe their flaw is something they wish to overcome. Or maybe it's a trait that they share with another one of your characters which they could bond over. Or heck, maybe it's because of this shared flaw they have with said character that they don't get along with each other. There's so many possibilities giving your flaws to your OCs can offer. Wanting to write a character that has no flaws is perfectly fine, and I'm not trying to say they need to have flaws. But I just feel like people can become more attached to characters because of their imperfections. Seeing a character that always wins or never faces consequences can get boring at times since you always know what to expect. Which is why most of the time, a lot of people will love mean side characters more than the protagonist. Like Regina, George, or Amity from the Owl House. At the beginning, of course. These characters are more flawed compared to the protagonist, which a lot of people are drawn to. Sometimes we want to see people struggle and overcome that struggle. It's also a helpful way to make problems that arise in your story feel more natural. Rather than having problems come to your OCs by chance, maybe it's because of their flaws that they unknowingly cause a conflict. Lately, this has been one of my favorite things to think about when fleshing out a character. Well, other than the next tip, which is number 3, their dynamics with other characters. Now this is a fun one, and I'm pretty sure most of us already do this. Well, unless you only have one OC. In that case, maybe this one doesn't apply to you. It's still fun to think about though. I've mentioned this before, but I value character relationships above anything else. It allows for the viewer to see different sides of a character depending on who they're with. Thinking of character dynamics can be a lot of fun since there's so many possibilities you can do with it. You could make characters that get along, that don't get along, or maybe characters that have more of a sibling bond. There's a lot you could do with it. And it's even more interesting when they don't act the same towards everyone. Using my characters as another example, sorry, I can't help but talk about them. We have Melanie, who like I mentioned earlier, tries her best to get along with everyone. She has a really close relationship with her brother Nova, but when it comes to the main character Damien, she does not like him at first. She thinks that he's bringing trouble into Nova's life, so she does not like that they're working together. However, for the sake of her brother, she tries her best to put up with him. I feel like adding varying dynamics between characters adds a lot of interest. There's nothing wrong with everyone getting along, in fact that can be really sweet. I just personally love adding some spice to my characters since it makes them feel more like actual people. Not everyone gets along at first, which is fine. It could make for a nice journey between the characters, seeing them get along as the story progresses, or maybe they never get along. Both are fine. Tip number 4, think about their interests. This is one you guys have actually helped me with. During my Q&A video a while back, some of you asked me things like, what animal would your OCs be? What are their hobbies? And that made me realize that I had no idea. I had never thought about those things since at the time I didn't consider them necessary. However, the more I thought about it in order to answer the question, the more I realized that it was actually fun thinking about these small details. It can make your characters more interesting and can tell a lot about the character by what hobbies they enjoy. This is actually something even I'm still trying to fully figure out with my characters. Recently, thanks to Tamagotchi Life, I gave Damien a guitar which he likes to play for Nova. I thought this was the cutest thing ever, and so now playing the guitar is one of his favorite things to do to pass the time. I even continued playing around with this idea and thought that maybe the reason he wanted to start playing the guitar and grew to love music is because it was a way to cancel out all the voices of the ghosts who tried talking to him. Of course, you don't have to think this deeply about their hobbies, and it could just be because it's something they genuinely enjoy. This is just an example of how thinking about your character's interests can lead to so many possibilities, and maybe it could even add to their character plot-wise. Let's say your character loves shopping and that they love it so much that it causes their room to be messy, which in turn causes them to become an overall messy person. Maybe at some point in the story they get trusted to keep hold of an important item but end up losing it because of their mess. This could lead to a flaw of theirs, which at the same time could add to the plot. But again, it doesn't have to be this thought out. I just feel like by giving them some hobbies and interests, it can make them feel more fleshed out instead of one-dimensional characters. And now for our 5th and final tip, think of their background. Like about their relationship with their family or how their childhood was like. Well, unless your character is a kid. In that case, maybe only think about their family, or maybe you could even think about them as adults. Like if they'd act completely different from when they were kids, or if they'd still share traits from their past self. Not all stories need to know what the character's background was like, but I feel like it's still fun to think about since it could explain why a character acts the way they do. Like maybe they're closed off because they had a complicated childhood, or maybe you have a female character who was raised with only brothers and so she struggles getting along with other girls because of it. I just find it fun thinking about what kind of past my characters had that led to their personalities now. And if you're like me that likes making seemingly simple things more complicated, you could give their family's lore too. This is optional, of course, but it can be a lot of fun. I'll be using my OC, Damien's mom, as an example for this. I'm currently still thinking about her lore, but I'll say what I have so far since I think it contributes a lot to Damien's character. She was in an unhappy marriage when she had Damien. She tried just pushing through it and was convincing herself that everything was fine when it really wasn't. It wasn't until Damien was about 8 or 9 that she realized that she didn't want to live like this anymore. That she didn't want Damien to live like this anymore. And so, although it was hard, she decided to leave him. She was struggling a lot during this time, and it didn't help that her son was telling her that he could talk to dead people. It became a lot for her, and so she eventually snapped at him, telling him to just be normal. She felt horrible after this, but she was going through so much that it eventually just became too much. And although she did apologize to Damien, that sentence stuck with him and is the reason he doesn't tell her that he can still see the ghosts. He doesn't want to be a problem, and so although they have a great relationship, there's still a small strain since he feels like he can't confide in her about this. Okay, that was a lot of lore drop just now, but this is what I mean by using these tips to make your characters feel more fleshed out. Now you know about why they act the way they do, and you get some extra lore out of it by creating new characters. They may not always play an important role, but it's still fun. Or maybe your character doesn't have a family. That doesn't mean they're not fleshed out. Them not having a family can add to their background. Maybe they're just a being that was born out of thin air, and because of that they have a lot of power. Or maybe they were abandoned as a kid, but throughout the story meet characters who become their family. There's a lot of ways you can go about thinking of your character's backstory. Either way, it adds a lot to them. And so that's all the tips I have to make your characters feel more fleshed out. Again, I'm no professional when it comes to creating characters. These are just tips that have helped me become more attached to my little guys. And if you have a character who's more simple or that doesn't need all these tips like having flaws but that you still love with your whole heart, that's great! I'm not trying to say that your character needs to be complicated to be lovable. If your character is just a silly little guy living their life, that's amazing. As long as you love them and are happy, that's all that matters. These are just some tips that have personally helped me, which I hope can help some of you guys too. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay safe, and as always, I hope you have a great day.